Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS-Inform. Joining us in the studio is Kris Lasher. She is the Victim Services Coordinator with Crisis Connection. Kris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's unfortunate that we have you in to talk about what we're about to talk about, but it is something that needs to be made aware. This is April is and has been Sexual Abuse Awareness Month.
It is. Okay. It is and has, yes.
Now, what is sexual abuse? What's the definition, if there is a definition?
There's a range. Any kind of sexual abuse can be anything from verbal sexual harassment that's made someone feel uncomfortable at home or in the workplace, to any kind of child molestation or rape. There's a full range, and it can be in any aspect of that.
And I think a lot of times people understand the rape part, but they don't realize that maybe they're at a lower level, just touching somebody inappropriately, or they may have been touched inappropriately, but don't realize it because they think, well, that's just somebody, that's the way they talk to me as they touch me. That's not always the case. How do you know that level? Well,
you're right, you're right. The big important aspect here is consent, or lack of consent. So regardless of whether someone's in a relationship or not, if someone has touched or behaved without that person's consent, that can be considered abuse.
So who are we talking about? Are we talking about husband and wife? Yes?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
Are we talking about somebody on a date? Are we talking about, in this area, we generally don't have somebody jumping out of the bushes and causing a problem. Okay, that does happen, yes, but
it's
probably more often than not, and this is the part that we don't recognize maybe or know that line, is it's happening within families and within groups of people.
Agreed, yes. And so that is kind of a misconception that anyone who is a predator is jumping out of bushes, or you can tell what he or she looks like by how they're dressed. And that's not the case majority of the time, vast majority of the time. A victim will know their perpetrator, have a relationship in another way, maybe a relative, maybe a friend, maybe someone that they've been dating or married to. It's that lack of consent that has changed the relationship from this is a friend who I give a hug to now I've just touched that person, and that's not been asked for, or it's not been permitted.
Okay. But some people are touchy-feely people. They just, they like to come up and say, how you doing? Is that inappropriate?
We wouldn't consider that to be the case. There's certainly some areas of a person's personal body that are considered to be more private than others. Okay. And those are the ones that typically would be would fall into this area. Now, that being said, if someone is grabbing someone's arm, that's a different type of violence. That still could be considered, but that wouldn't automatically be considered some sort of a sexual abuse.
Is sexual abuse and domestic violence or violent abuse often related to each other? Or because I know in I think October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and this is Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. Are they usually tied into each other? Is there usually a connection?
They can be. They can be.
But not always.
But not always. Okay. It's true. So in domestic violence, there is definitely a relationship there, though actually with domestic violence, it doesn't have to be just an intimate partner. It can be a relative now, someone else living in the household. So those two can go hand in hand. Just because someone is married doesn't mean that they should be forced to any kind of sexual activity if they do not want that. That's not considered consent, even if two people are legally married, or if someone hasn't been in a long-term relationship. Consent is always required.
Crisis Connection is a source or a resource for people to go to should they have a question, or if they see something, or if they'd like to report something, or I guess really if they do just simply have a question.
Absolutely. Yes.
Do you go online? Should we call you? How does Crisis Connection help folks?
We certainly have lots of social media. We have Facebook, we have a website, we have a Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Pinterest boards. The Pinterest boards are amazing. They have a variety of information that someone might have a question, be able to pull what they need right off of one of those Pinterest boards. But also, we have regular office hours, 9 to 5. We can be reached at our 800 number 24/7. That number is 800-245-4580. And we're happy to answer a question. If someone has a concern, I don't know if this is something, but I just want to talk about it. And I will say that if someone is an adult and they think that something may have happened to them, all of our services are 100% confidential, and no one is required to contact the police. If someone is an adult, even if something has happened to them, they can come in, we can talk about it, it's confidential, it doesn't go any further. That being said, if something has happened to a minor, like every other entity, we're required to report it, and it must be investigated.
And of course, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there really that much of a problem in our area, or are we immune from it?
I don't think any community is immune from it. We do. We are a wonderful, friendly, family-friendly community. That being said, we do deal with it. We have numbers that, and I could tell you that the average right now is that 1 in 4 females, 1 in 7 males will deal with some sort of sexual assault. Sexual abuse, anything from harassment to rape, somewhere in the course of their lifetime. And that is across the board, whether we live in this county or any of our counties.
Is it socioeconomic? Is it the less income you have, the more likely you're to be in that situation, or is it?
Not really. It's really, it doesn't seem to have any kind of borders that way. It has to do with what kind of relationship the person is in, and maybe some family history as well. It could be that someone just grew up not realizing that this was inappropriate, and so it can move from one generation to the next, not recognizing where those parameters are for appropriate consensual behavior.
Now, we live in an electronic world, and years ago this wasn't so much the issue, but I guess there's good and bad. The good is that if you are concerned or you have a question, you can go on the internet and you can probably find some information that'll help you, or to guide you to somebody like Crisis Connection, or maybe give you an idea of what is abuse and what to do about it. But then on the other hand, there's also things like Facebook and Twitter then that will shame a victim and make it harder for them to come out.
Yes, it's regardless of the degree of the crime, it's a very hard thing for someone to come forward and say, this has happened to me. So oftentimes victims will blame themselves. They'll think, what did I say? What did I do? Did I ask for this? Did I? And that's never the case. And then what happens is if someone's actually brave enough to say, hey, I think this has happened, I don't want this to happen to anyone else. So oftentimes, I don't know if it's out of fear or misunderstanding, we have community members that are more likely to want to blame the victim. Well, was she drinking? Had she been wearing something? And I don't know if this can be even something that is shared, but in our office we'll say, really, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. A person should be able to walk around with absolutely nothing on and not be a victim of sexual assault. That doesn't mean if you're in public you wouldn't get something like indecent exposure. I mean,
sure.
Certainly we wouldn't, we don't promote that, but to say that what someone was wearing was promoting them to be victimized is inappropriate.
So don't be one of those people to do that, right?
No, actually, we are wanting to promote more of a bystander support. There are so many ways that community members, because sexual assault, even if someone is not a victim, it does affect our community. It affects our sense of safety, and when victims don't get support, they end up having other problems. A lot of times there are some negative coping skills that are then brought forward, and more problems can happen. So it really is a community problem that, as if we were all positive bystanders and supporters, can actually improve the quality of our community.
Can you talk about that a little bit more? Is there someone maybe who who has gotten into a situation, and I don't mean that they've gotten it, that has been put into a situation, not of their own decision, then they may turn to alcohol or drug addiction because of that, as a way of coping? Is that?
We do find that to be the case. Well, any kind of assault is such a violation that it's hard for a person to separate themselves from that. And so if a person is already blaming themselves for something that they didn't do, they're trying to then find some sort of coping way to deal with it. If for some reason they're not supported in talking, coming forward, getting positive support, there are other avenues that often get taken. Sometimes alcohol, drugs, maybe even a series of really negative relationships, because a person's not feeling that positive about themselves. They could find themselves in a somewhat of a destructive relationship or series of relationships.
Donna, there's a new program that you're starting to institute, because I can sure see where this happens, and this is a great thing that you're doing. It's called Raise the Bar. Can you talk about that?
Certainly. It's not our program. It's going on in various states, and Indiana has chosen to pick it up. What we're doing in the spirit of bystander, we're recognizing that sometimes situations happen in bars, and so, or maybe something gets started in a bar and then it turns into something negative after. So we have several bars in our communities, in 5 of our counties, that are going to be assisting us in this program. It would allow someone who's in a situation in a bar to get assistance from the staff. It could be anything from, and the bars that are involved will have some materials available in discrete places. So if someone is deciding, hey, I met this person here and he or she is not behaving in a way that makes me feel comfortable, the person can go to the bartender or one of the wait staff and ask for a specific type of drink, and that bartender or wait staff will recognize that the person needs help. It may mean they need to call the police. It may mean someone just wants to be walked out to their car and discreetly leave the situation without any further incident.
Yeah. And sometimes we're afraid to do that. We should be able to say, look, I don't feel comfortable, and go to the bartender and say, I need somebody to walk me to my car because this guy make me, yeah.
Absolutely so.
But we're afraid to do that for various reasons. One, we don't want to offend somebody.
Don't want to make a scene.
Yeah, and don't want to make a scene. But I think sometimes you need to just stand up and say, I need to watch myself.
We do have a tendency to, we're very polite people, and as a result, we sometimes don't put our best interests first. And so for anyone who's in a situation that they're looking out for everyone else and maybe not themselves, we hope that some of these programs, whether it's the information they can receive and support from Crisis Connection or this Raise the Bar program, helps someone feel a little more empowered in the situation they're in.
Kris, thanks so much for coming in. And we want to point out Crisis Connection does wonderful work. And it's great that it's a shame that you exist, but it's great that you exist. And again, go through their website or the phone number again.
It's the 800 number is 800-245-4580. We also have a local office number here, 812-482-1555, and that's available 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Now,
while we're talking about Sexual Abuse Awareness Month, you can call that for domestic abuse, child abuse, any abuse that you would see.
Absolutely. If someone is in a relationship and they're trying to decide if it's really healthy or not, they can have a conversation with us. Or if they, what we also see is with teen dating, maybe a daughter's in a relationship or a niece and wanting to get information for that, or a nephew or a son. Want to get information, want to just check out, does this sound like something that could be a problem? We're available.
All right. Kris, thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Kris Lasher, who is the Victim Services Coordinator for Crisis Connection, has been our guest. Thank you for watching WJTS Inform. We're local people watching local people.